I'm going to use this time to go over the history of Korean lacquerware and lacquer craft, present an overview of that to you today and how the technology is being passed down and transmitted. And I want to talk about the relationship that Korean lacquer craft has with lacquer across the Asia-Pacific region. I believe that when we look across history, humans have made great progress by using tools. Some of the first tools that humans used were stones and wood, and the stones were later used to make earthenware. The earthenware, however, had some faults because they would continue to absorb moisture and they would not be able to contain liquid. Earthenware has evolved into glazed ceramic. However, in the case of Korea, we have seen lacquer technique that was developed highly. Lacquer technique is very difficult to master because you have to handle lacquer sap at the risk of skin disease, and you have to create the right environment for the hardening process. So it's a very difficult material to use with. However, across East Asia, many people have used lacquer technology in many regions from the Neolithic age because they knew the advantages and the merits of lacquer. And I think that this is something that is familiar to all of the experts present here today. In West Asia and Europe, typically they used varnishes that mixed drying oil and resin, whereas in East Asia, many artisans use lacquer instead as a basic varnish. This shows us that lacquer is seen as a great material and technology. And they represent the commonality of Asian culture. We've just heard from Professor Emeritus Bae in his keynote speech about the brief history of lacquer craft in Korea. But just to give you another repeat of that, there are in Korea 6 species of the lacquer tree currently remaining. The chamot tree in particular, the chamot tree is used widely in lacquer craft. In Southeast Asia, I understand that they use another kind of tree that produces a darker form of lacquer sap. So the species might be different, and the technologies used might be different, but across all of the Asian countries, these technologies were grown and developed in an organic sense. Here you would see a relic that was unearthed from the 4000 and 5000 BC era from the Hemudu ruins in Yuyao in Zhejiang province in China. On the right-hand side, this is from the Kakinoshima site in Hokkaido in Japan. It's a vessel, as you can see, and on the surface of this, there's red lacquer, red pigment. The red lacquer was used to give it this vibrant red color, and this dates back to 7000 BC. So as you can see, this is a very old vessel, and they were unearthed in 2 regions that are very geographically far away from each other. However, this shows us that in the Neolithic era, many Asian countries all had these traditions that were grown organically in their own respective countries. In the case of Korea, it is also similar. From the Neolithic era, it is believed that earthenware and lacquerware have been used. Recently, this Shinan site and Kodae site revealed much red lacquerware that date back to about 3000 BC. As you can see, this red earth, the red earth was used to create this earthenware, and lacquer was brushed on top of this earthenware. This is something that we were able to see. Across Northeast Asia, this lacquer culture had developed very organically since the Neolithic era. And then later on, in historic times, many of the Asian countries engaged in interactions with each other, exchange, and that actually led to even more development of lacquer craft. Before the Three Kingdoms period in Korea, there are 2 archaeological major sites that unearth these lacquerwares. This is a site in Dahori in Changwon of Korea, dates back to the 1st century BC. You could see sheaths handles of Korean-style bronze dagger, vessels for rites such as bowls and plates, and ceremonial goods as well. Many techniques can be discovered here. In some cases, lacquerware is painted directly on the surface of the wood base. This is a technique called 목심칠기. In some cases, the lacquer is done on ceramics, or in some cases, the lacquer is brushed on top of strips of bamboo. These relics that you're seeing right now were unearthed in Gwangju, in a site that we call Shincheondong. The one that you see on the middle, that's a bowl, and there's lacquer there, lacquer sap. This was a bowl that contained lacquer sap for artisans to use to make lacquerware. And the lacquer spatula that you see on the right, it was used to make lacquerware and also to get the lacquer sap from the lacquer trees. So these different tools and crafts show us that at least in the 4th century BC, a lot of these crafts were developed in earnest. Through research, we're able to see that this lacquerware that was used, the lacquer that was used at the time, is not that viscous. There were many coats of lacquer that was brushed on top, maybe about 4 to 5 coats. On the right-hand side, you would see the photograph of polarized light. The layers of the lacquer are quite distinct. This is something that we were able to see in the early Bronze era. And this is good evidence that tells us that lacquerware was used in earnest in Korea. These are some relics that were found in Pyongyang, and this shows us that these are Chinese lacquerware that have been imported to Korea by way of Pyongyang. And in this case, they use very thick layers of lacquer using some cloth fabric, and in some cases, hemp would be placed on top of wood with lacquer coats coated on top of that. What is very characteristic here is this cup with ears. The cup with ears has been variously studied and researched, and this shows us that this cup with ears reveals a technique that was not necessarily used in Korea at the time. If you look at the bottom, on the bottom of this cup, and when we did an in-depth analysis of the layers on the bottom of the cup, you would see that there are an extra layer of undercoating directly on the wood. This is a technique that is typical of the Chinese technique during this period, the Chinese Han Dynasty, where they use undercoating, and then on top of the undercoat, they would create the main coat, brush the main coat of lacquer, and then coat the exterior of the cup. This is a technique that is characteristic of the Han Dynasty. We don't know whether this was imported from China or whether somebody in Korea went to study or went to learn about lacquer art in China and then came back to Korea and made this, but we know that Chinese art directly influenced Korean lacquer art as well. In the Three Kingdoms period, they continued to transmit and uphold the tradition that was evident in the earlier periods, in the Bronze period, and etc. And also, they received a lot of influences from Tang Dynasty in China. From the left-hand side, you would see Goguryeo art, then Silla art, and Baekje art. From the 5th century to the 6th century. You would see that there are many different kinds of lacquer art there. These lacquer crafts, many of them were commissioned by the royal court. So the king and his family would typically commission these crafts. Many of these lacquer crafts were typically produced for the upper classes, and in fact they were a symbol of someone's prestige and wealth. We also have some relics that have been unearthed from the tomb of King Muryung, such as a lacquer coffin that you see on the left and the king's footrest on the right. And these are also evidence of the particular characteristics at the time. On the bottom, you would see the photographs show that there was no use of hemp cloth there, that the lacquer was placed directly on the wooden surface, but the wooden surface was kept very flat and very smooth before the lacquer was coated on. The layers of lacquer varnish are very thin. You would see here on the right-hand side that the layers are quite distinct. We can see through this that the lacquer was more refined in this time. During the unified Shilla period, we were able to see more transparent layers of lacquer, and the black and the red colors therefore were made to pop even more, and the lacquer was refined even further to use as a priming coat. In fact, in some cases, they would use bone powder and then apply a priming coat more than twice, using the different kinds of fine powder. There is a pond called Wolji Pond in the city of Gyeongju in Korea. These different relics have been unearthed there, and they can tell us the kinds of very sophisticated techniques that were available in Korea at the time. Together with the lacquer craft, Tang China was influential in bringing about another decorative technique called tang, where they hammer flat pieces of gold leaf and silver leaf and use them as decorative patterns on top of the surface, and then have that lacquered. In Korea, they started using these sheets of silver and gold, but later they used mother of pearl inlay. The mother of pearl inlay lacquer craft is something that really represents the essence of Korean art, but much of this was brought in through influence from Chinese art. During the Goryeo dynasty, there aren't many crafts that we were able to unearth, not many relics that we were able to find during that time, but with the few that we have, we were still able to understand the techniques there. And around this time, during the Goryeo dynasty, there was a lot of interchange and inter-exchange with China and Japan. And there was even a government workshop, a central government workshop, where artisans and craftsmen would work on making lacquerware. And they would typically create very sophisticated, very advanced techniques. They would make cups used by the upper class, sometimes also religious vessels that were used in memorial rites. And in fact, there were some wooden utensils that were lacquer that were used by members of the common class, but many of them have been lost in our records. Most of the lacquer craft were typically used by the upper class, and that is something that we're able to see through historical evidence and records. During the Goryeo dynasty, we see a lot of the technique called 목심절기, where fabric is layered on the surface of wood base. The wood base is typically too thin, and so they cannot be assembled using nails. So adhesives would be used, such as glue or glue derived from fish, and then fabric would be used to cover it. This flower-shaped cup, as you can see, we did an X-ray photograph of this flower-shaped cup, and if you take a look inside, you would see a very thin layer of wood, and it has been lacquered. On these photographs that you see of the polarized light and transmitted light on the bottom, there's the underpaint and the main paint. There are very distinct layers of the different coats of lacquer paint. So this also shows us that the level of technique was quite high. This bowl set is also similar. You would see that a very thin piece of wood has been curved to create the shape, and hemp was coated on top, and then the entire end result was lacquered. So it's a very delicate kind of technique that was used here. In the Goryeo dynasty, what we see here is a lacquer incense box. So it's a box that would be used to contain incense. And this was decorated with many different kinds of motifs. We can only see it in this black and white photograph. The very thin layers have been very much destroyed. However, we are able to take these little photographs to study the decorations and the motifs. There was silk placed and some lacquer coats placed on top of that using bone powder, and the coats will be repeated 2 or 3 times to give them a very nice sheen and a nice varnish. The layers of the lacquer will be placed on top of each other consecutively, and on the upper coat of the lacquer, there was gold powder that was dusted on top of that, which is very similar to the makie technique that was used in Japan. So we would see that there are very transparent coats of lacquer that were placed consecutively on top, which would allow this to really reflect a lot of the light, giving it a very decorative beauty. Take a look at these photographs and cross sections of the epi-illumination microscope. This is where a sea turtle's back, the shell, the tortoise shell, would be lightly carved and used as a decorative emblem here. The red ink, the red dyes can still be seen. On the left-hand side, you would see that gold powder has been used to create that bird shape. And that bird shape on the right-hand picture, you would see it's a very thin layer on top. So each of the layers are very distinctive, and each of the layers have a light reflective capacity, which would really allow the light to play off the surface of this particular relic. The Najeon Chilgi of Koryo shows delicate and elaborate composition of patterns as well. Shu Ji-hui, an envoy of North Song Dynasty, visited Kaegyeong, and he said that the applying lacquer in Korea is inferior to that of China or Song Dynasty, but the decorative technique using mother of pearl is very highly sophisticated. That is what the Chinese envoy said. At the time, Goryeo dynasty might not have been very sophisticated in using lacquer itself, but it was very highly skilled in using mother of pearl. Typically, the patterns and the motifs that were used in Najeon Chilgi of Goryeo would be formed by cutting each component of patterns in small pieces and combining them. Many flower motifs are used, such as lotuses, chrysanthemums, and peonies. The size of each pattern is less than 1 centimeter, and the smallest one is only 2 to 3 millimeters. So these are very tiny little pieces of shells, but once they are put together by the artisan and by the craftsman, they will create very decorative designs and patterns. At this time, you have to remember that the artisans did not have many tools. They didn't have wire saws or small hand saws, so they could just use their hands to cut the small shells and seashells and abalone shells. These artisans were able to create a sort of very elegant and very refined lacquer craft art. Later, it is known that the Empress of Yuan Dynasty in China requested that Najeon lacquer boxes from Korea be sent to her to house Buddhist scriptures. In fact, about 10 pieces of the boxes of Najeon scriptures remaining in the world can also be related to this request by the Chinese Empress. For instance, this is being kept at the British Museum in London. It's a sutra holder with the mother of pearl inlay. In the Joseon dynasty, they wanted to expand the base of production and use and vary its own techniques based on the techniques that they inherited from Goryeo. Until the middle of the Joseon dynasty, these master artisans who made lacquer craft and mother of pearl inlay were subordinated to the central and local government workshops. So these artisans would be mindful of the past traditions, but they were also very innovative in the use of lacquer craft and mother of pearl. If we take a look at the relics, we would see in some cases lacquer is applied directly to wood without the use of hemp. And the layers tend to be very thin. And in some cases, they only brush 1 or 2 layers instead of 4 or 5 in the past. So it's a very simplified technique that they're using the Joseon dynasty. This could be because there was more demand for lacquer, so they were trying to use less of the lacquer sap. And also, they wanted to really show off more of the wooden details, the grain of the wood more so than the lacquer. So it's also an aesthetic reason as well. In the Joseon dynasty, this particular work that you see here, this lacquered comb box, is characteristic of the Joseon dynasty's art. This is a comb box where women would use to keep their combs or various different articles that they would use in their dresser. You could see the box is a little bit bigger than we would see in the Goryeo dynasty. And the decorations are also a little bit bigger as well. But the decorations, they've been hammered flat. And when they've been hammered flat, these cracks appear on the surface of the shells, but the cracks are also a part of the decoration. In the Joseon dynasty, we would see that the craftsmen would try to use and keep the materials in their essential sense. In the 19th century, the shells would be sliced even thinner to create even these straight lines, as you can see. Through these technological advancements, this led to the total overall cost and the price of the lacquer craft going down and demand going up as well. Many artisans started manufacturing these to the end of Joseon. There are many workshops that we were able to find across Korea, and these lacquer crafts were developed currently up to the 20th century. Many artisans became artists later on. In 1921, Chun Sung-gyu was a master artisan who was very prominent in his field. He introduced a fret saw for cutting the mother of pearl. You can see he was inheriting the traditional art techniques, but he was also trying something new. Kim Bong-yong is another artisan. This is a design that he created in the early 1900s. This is around the time when Korea was moving into the era of modernity. In 1952, there was a mother of pearl inlay lacquerware training institute that was established in Gyeongsangnam-do province. On the left picture, you would see a portrait of Kim Bong-yong and Yu Kang-yeol, who were also the masters and teachers who worked at this training institute. They would offer training and education. And Kim was also a professor at Hongik University. This training institute was very active, and even now, the training institute artisans the graduates continue to do active work in the field. This is a small dining bowl that was made by Kim Bong-yong. You can see that the materials are quite refined, but the designs are a little bit more contemporary. In Korea, this is typically the process used to get the lacquer sap. So first, the bark is stripped off a lacquer tree, and then these horizontal scars are made on the tree and to tap into the sap inside. I think this is very similar, a similar technique that is used across Asia. So from June to September, the sap is harvested. In July and August, this flourishing lacquer from these 2 months are typically seen as the highest quality lacquer. After the sap is all harvested, in some cases they are used to make hwachil, where the remaining lacquer sap is gathered and they are burned. And because heat has been added to this sap, they cannot be hardened properly. However, these hardened hwacheol sap has still been used without leaving no room for waste in many cases of lacquer craft art. Many of these refining techniques are currently used and being transmitted right now under the name of 칠기장. During the Joseon dynasty, one of the characteristics of the lacquerware that was used were transparent layers of lacquer is continuously applied on the woodenware. You can see that process depicted here in the photos, where the transparent coats of lacquer are continuously applied on and then wiped off and then added on again. And this is a tradition that we're still seeing in Korea. Another thing that we're seeing, this tradition is where opaque lacquer is added to the woodenware, where the first raw lacquer is applied, then hemp, then another coat of opaque lacquer, and in the end, use a cinnabar lacquer, and you rub it with the water, and then you polish it. And this technique is currently transmitted down to students to this day. Lastly, I want to talk about the process of how we safeguard and preserve lacquer crafts technology in Korea. And by that, I want to talk about how these cultural heritage, these were first designated. In 1975, the cutting technique was designated as important national tangible cultural heritage following 1966, when Najeon Chilgijang, artisan of mother of pearl lacquer, was the first to be designated as a national important and tangible cultural heritage. We can see that although Somukjang, cabinet makers, was also designated as an important national and tangible cultural heritage in 1975, the Najeon Chilgi, or mother of pearl lacquerware, was designated first among lacquer-related techniques because it emphasized the comprehensive technology of making complete Najeon lacquerware. This shows us that in Korea there was a recognition that the Najeon Chilgi is really a representative of Korean art. In the National Museum of Korea, you would be able to see lacquer crafts from various Asian countries. This is from the China Gallery, the red lacquer bowl with the lid, or in Japan, the lacquered inkstone vase using maki technique, or the Cambodian relic, lacquerware inlaid with mother of pearl. These can all be found in the National Museum of Korea. We can see that Asian lacquer culture is so deep, and the aesthetics are a little bit different across countries, but the essence of the material of lacquer can still be seen across all of these different items. Across the technology of lacquer and use of the materials, some of the processes are similar in that you need to have a very deep understanding of nature itself. So I believe that having this documentation and inventorying of such traditions is very important because it helps us to honor the tradition. By archiving and inventorying and keeping records of all of these different transmission activity and traditions, that will be very helpful for us to continue this tradition into the years. Thank you very much.